If you run more than one business or you're trying to combine multiple things you do under one brand, this video is going to save you from a very costly mistake, one that costs way more than it looks like upfront. So I'm going to show you exactly how to tell if your businesses can share one position or if you're trying to combine them and doing so is setting you up for a much more expensive problem later. And I'm going to walk you through a real example so you can see exactly how to apply this to your own situation. So a few years ago, I lost over $19,371 because the foundation of my house was never built properly to begin with. And that didn't show up right away. It never does. It showed up later. There were cracks in the wall. The crown molding no longer lined up. Door frames were off. Wood floors started to split. But none of those were the actual real problem, right? They were where the problem became visible. And those repairs that I had to fix were on top of what it cost to fix that foundation. And that same exact thing happens in your business if you don't figure out your positioning before you layer everything else on top of it. So here's what that actually looks like. A prospective client came to me and he wanted to figure out his positioning and his messaging so he could finally update his website. I've changed some details to protect his privacy, but the lesson is exactly what happened. So he had three completely different things going on: fractional COO consulting, youth lacrosse coaching, and a scholarship fund that he started after losing a close friend. He was strongly considering one website to bring all three together and tell one story about him and about his services. So you might already be nodding along because you've got your own version of this. Maybe it's not three businesses. Maybe it's one business with two very different types of clients, or maybe a handful of things you do that don't obviously belong together on paper. So think of it like this: three genuinely different businesses are like three different houses, say a beach house, a log cabin, and a yurt. Each one needs its own foundation, obviously, right? Built for its own terrain, its own climate, its own purpose. You can't pour one slab and expect it to hold all three. Even if there's a shared philosophy behind how you show up, that doesn't mean your audiences are showing up with the same goals or questions across those different businesses. Now, sometimes one foundation genuinely can support more than one structure. Think townhouses, condos, apartments. There's real structural alignment there. They have shared walls, shared systems. That design was built from the start to hold multiple units under one roof. That's the version where combining things absolutely makes sense. So, what does that look like in a business? Well, let's say you run a consulting agency and you're also branding out to take on solo clients or you're speaking on a similar topic. The problem that you solve is similar across both. So you're applying a similar framework either way, you're just going deeper in one and broader in the other. That's a shared foundation. That's when combining works. But a beach house, a cabin, and a yurt, they were never designed to share one, and forcing it does not save you money. It just means the whole structure is unstable from the start. So, how do you know which one you have? Well, that's what we're getting into. This is where most people go wrong, and it's not really their fault. Positioning is kind of invisible. You can't see it the way you can see your website or your logo or your LinkedIn headline. So when something feels off, the thing you can point to is the visible layer. The website's confusing. People don't understand when I introduce myself at networking. The copy is falling flat. Those are the cracks in the wall. They're real, but they're not the foundational problem. So this potential client, he was even worried that building two separate sites instead of one would cost more. But counterintuitively, combining everything into one site actually becomes more expensive over time. It requires more complex navigation, more explanation to prevent confusion, more messaging work to force different offers to feel cohesive. And then there's just more compromises over it all because you're trying to do way too much at once. So that's like the repair bill. Like my foundation, it costs more the longer you wait to deal with the structural issue. So people get so caught up in this, right? Well, what about my website? What about my LinkedIn? I don't want to show up differently in different places. I get it. Here's what I know you're really worried about. What if your things really are that different? Well, yeah, let's say you're reading tarot cards, doing photography, and working as an executive coach. That's genuinely three different things. But here's what you might be missing. The people who want tarot readings probably aren't in the same room as the people hiring you for executive coaching. They're not following you in the same place for the same reason at the same time. You're not going to show up talking about all three of those things in all of the same places. So your photography might live on Instagram, your executive coaching might live on LinkedIn, your tarot work might live somewhere else entirely or nowhere social at all. I don't know. I would have to do audience research to know where your tarot card audience is hanging out and spending time. And not every business, believe it or not, needs social media to grow. People want to figure out, well, how do I make these things connect? Can I bring my personal stories in? You absolutely can. You can talk about photography, tarot work, about coaching, and you can tell stories when they relate. But what you can't do is force them into one blended pitch on one platform at one time and expect anyone to know what you actually do. Showing up confusing everywhere is so much worse than figuring out what you need to be saying where. One inconsistent, muddled message across every platform does not protect your consistency. It just guarantees that nobody understands you anywhere. So let's back up a little bit to that client I was telling you about. He kept getting stuck on the website. Should I have one? Should I have two? What should it look like? How should it be organized? He kept coming back to those questions over and over because that's the part that he could picture in his head. But positioning doesn't have a layout. You can't picture it the way you picture a homepage. So every time we tried to talk about the site, we were really just talking around the problem, which was who is he to each of these audiences and why should they pick him over the other options they have? We had to stop talking about pages and go back to that. It wasn't that the website didn't matter, it mattered a lot to him, but you can't design something well when you don't know what it actually needs to say. The through line that holds this together isn't a shared platform. It could be things like your story, your values, who you are as a person. That consistency is what decreases confusion if someone happens to land on more than one page. Each offer still gets to lead with the right position for the right audience while still feeling authentically like him. So we had a few more conversations after that. And in the end, it wasn't a fit. He wanted what he wanted, and I was not willing to build him something that research wouldn't back up. That happens. Not every prospective client is the right one. And sometimes the most useful thing you can do is tell someone the truth about their foundation, even if they came to you asking about paint colors. So if you're running multiple businesses or offers under one roof or one name, don't start with your website. Don't start with your messaging. Start with your positioning. What's actually consistent across everything you do, and where does each audience genuinely need its own foundation? Fix that first, and then everything else holds up a lot better after. So I break down two other versions of this multiple audience problem in my newsletter, which is linked below. Or if you want to work through your specific situation together, go ahead and book a clarity call. The link for that is below also.